Hey, Constantine. Fill us in on what we're talking about today.
Grief in the holidays. Now that's quite a mouthful to start a conversation. So that's what we're talking about today. Do you have any takeaways, any thoughts on this important idea? I feel like it is such an important topic, and we're going to talk about it probably every year, just because it's a joyful time, it's a sad time for some, and I just thought that I know that's coming up in session. I'm sure it's coming up for you in session. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I mean, as you know, I see lots of folks dealing with grief and trauma,
Right.
and that sort of stuff. So basically, every year this comes up where the holidays can be a really hard time.
For sure.
You know, I think it's so easy for us to, in the holiday season, think more so about the past and past holidays. It's we reminisce a lot more.
Mhm.
We get more nostalgic. We think about Christmases or whatever holidays from the past. And those memories, although they're great when people kind of come back from them,
Mhm.
and they notice that their father or spouse or child who passed away isn't here any longer. It can be really, really hard, really, really triggering.
For sure. For sure.
And they say that anniversaries are really hard,
Mhm.
but these holidays, I feel, have the same type of effect as like the first or the second or the third or whatever anniversary of
Mhm.
of a passing.
I agree. One thing that comes to mind is that grief for loss of individuals. Of course, that's I guess in a way an unfortunate part of life. However, one thing that comes to mind, and some of the things that I hear from some of the clients, is that grief also takes place in, like, I work with a lot of individuals who are transitioning from one phase in life into another, or some medical concern that has happened that they can't no longer do what they used to be doing before. So that's sort of there's loss and grief, maybe not of an individual, but more of a behavior that they potentially have done so many times, like done a race for so many times during a particular holiday season, and that's sort of what they were looking for, and then no longer can do it. And that I feel like that's also an element to consider, that yes, a loss of a loved one is extremely painful. I do want to also potentially extend it out, that it also applies to other elements of life.
Right. We absolutely can be grieving and do go through grieving processes, like not just for people.
Right.
Now, well, let me ask this: do you think that I don't know how to put these in the right words, but like the other types of grief, or maybe we'll call it like a little bit more complicated grief.
Right.
Do you think that happens more so during holidays?
I just think it could highlight, for instance, to me, if we're living our everyday life and there's a particular loss, right? It's not that experience, it's not highlighted on the background of positivity, right? So everybody's doing their own thing. I feel like during a holiday season, because everything is kind of, the positivity, if you will, of life is elevated.
Mm-hmm.
Right, with holiday movies, with celebrations, right? So in the context of an elevated positivity, our own discomfort is highlighted, because now there's a stark difference between kind of what we're pulled to experience, which is positive, versus what we're truly experiencing. And in that stark difference is where, I don't know if the grief or the loss is increased, but now it comes into focus more, because we're told to experience positivity, but yet I'm sad.
Right.
So to me, that difference is really what highlights the individual pain.
One thing that's just I think an interesting example of that, right? Let's say we're talking about grief, when grieving something. Let's say someone went through a breakup in June.
Right.
Right. And I don't know. Let's say maybe June, July, August, September. They've kind of going through the grieving process, and they've sort of getting through it.
Sure.
Right? And coming through the other side of that. Now, come the holiday season, they might get lots of extra thoughts about their ex-boyfriend or girlfriend or what have you, right? And I think that you're exactly right. It might not be simply just because that they're reminded, but it could be that contrast, right? Like everything's supposed to be so happy and good and,
Right.
and great, and so that contrast where it's supposed to be feeling 9 out of 10, and you feel a 4 out of 10.
Right.
Well, that's a bigger difference than your average 5 out of 5.
Of course.
Sorry, 5 out of 10.
That's sort of in a way what I want to highlight to people is that just that's okay, right? Just noticing it, that this difference is what's going to highlight some of the feelings for you. Also, to me, related to this idea is that when we do focus a lot on, let's say, death and dying and the loss that comes there, again, if it's noted and you're, let's say, in a circle of friends or family that know about it, you're more likely to get sympathy, empathy, right, and understanding that, hey, you might not be in a good space. When we're talking about other types of loss, sometimes maybe not as stark as death, it may not be acknowledged as much.
Mm-hmm.
And then instead of people acknowledging, hey, listen, I know that breakup was very difficult for you, and I can imagine you're not really in the mood to celebrate, you'll probably get the opposite. You get, cheer up. It's the holiday season. Have a great time. How about we get a couple more drinks or this or that, right? Which, as we as clinicians know, actually makes it worse, right? We're looking for acknowledgement and validation. So one thing I just want to put out there, again, and I liked, Tim, what you always say, you really don't know what's happening for another person. And just if you notice somebody not doing great, it may not be a pull to tell them to enjoy it and just say, hey, listen, something might be happening for you. I get it. If you're open to it, let's go hang out. If not, I totally get it. Right? Just kind of leaning in a little bit into that. Because remember, we have almost like an instinct to be able to enjoy and experience positivity in general. That's what we all want. So when a person isn't in that space, just give them kind of the benefit of that something is happening.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get very far by telling them, cheer up. It's a holiday season. It's a holiday party or whatever. That's just not going to go as far as being able to attune to it a little bit.
So you're telling me if you're going through a rough time and I just say, don't feel your feelings, right, and come do this instead. Right. That's not going to work.
It's not going to work, and it's just most people hopefully don't do it when there's let's say there's death, something that people know about. Maybe other elements of loss. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's more refined or more, kind of you have to be more tuned into it. So my call to action, if you will, just first of all, just be mindful of that. If you find yourself at a party with somebody.
Yeah, I totally hear you there. And well, since you're there, I think that we've had an awesome discussion here. I'm going to go for our last call.
Sure.
And
what's your takeaway?
For the last call, for my takeaway, my takeaway is, normalizing how there can be much more triggered feelings around the holiday times. I see it all the time in my room.
Mm-hmm.
It's very apparent here because people talk about all of their stuff here. It is a more difficult time.
Right.
So just being very aware of all of that for other people, although it's a quote-unquote happy time.
Right. Oh, I think that's definitely something. Hopefully, some of our listeners can definitely take away. My takeaway is in support of that, and also at the same time a bit of a shift, and may go back a little bit on what I just said earlier. Is the idea that yes, this message is really more for not the friends around that individual but for individual kind of directly that's processing some sort of grief or loss. You are not only entitled, not only expected to feel some discomfort around a particular loss. However, I do want to challenge individuals to almost like create a boundary within oneself where you experience that feeling, allowing yourself to acknowledge that you're going through a difficult time. And sometimes that potentially paradoxically allows an individual to lean into some positivity. Mm-hmm. Being able to say, yes, listen, this year has been very difficult, right? To acknowledge to yourself that that's okay to feel this way, and allow space for pushing yourself a little bit to maybe have that positive conversation with a friend, or maybe even though you're not feeling like going to a holiday party, push yourself to go to that holiday party, acknowledging that, yes, I'm going through something and I'm going to allow the space for enjoyment. I know for some of the listeners be like, well, no, it's the last thing I want. I hear that. But healing also takes place from pushing ourselves. And that's sort of the message that I want to put out there. allow yourself to feel what you're feeling and push yourself to allow at least some space for positivity.
I like it. I like it a lot. To all the listeners out there, I hope that this is helpful. Hopefully it gives us all something to think about as we're approaching this holiday season. And thank you all for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time.
Yeah. Take care, guys. Bye.